But just go with foreign flicks for 800.
Ursula Andress.
What?
Ursula Andress, Catherine Deneuve, and Charo Twice.
That's foreign flicks, Mr. Connery. Foreign flicks.
Welcome to the Late Stardate, because it's always late somewhere in the world, and I'm your host, Bill Stone. I hit the wrong buttons, sorry. This is interesting when you have to do it all yourself. Tonight is a bit of potpourri, or what we like to call, laughingly in the entertainment business, as an evergreen show. That sometimes happens here in the event of two possibilities. One, there isn't much going on and I need content. Or two, I got lazy and I didn't want to write the script necessary to get a couple of hours content. Tonight it's a mix of both. There is plenty going on in the world of our usual genres and our current events, particularly as it relates to our usual genres. And I could have written a script before I started on it yesterday, but I was a bit hampered. Recent events in Minneapolis, Minnesota are proceeding at a breakneck pace. It's impossible to reliably keep up with. And as you know, a near slogan on this channel is the truism that nothing you see in the press is real. Nothing. Accuracy means a great deal to me. As of when I last polished this script, events have been shifting again. And unlike the usual prostitutes, I don't just run something and hope that it's accurate. I like to present actual facts on this show. And as of the present time, the facts are either unknown or disputed. The other thing that happened to me was, the other side of the, having my other foot in the nice science fiction stuff, was waiting to see just what a monumental flop Starfleet Academy was going to be. And it is indeed a monumental flop. I mean, just from the trailer, you knew it would suck. And, to begin with, man, it has Alex Kurtzman and his mafia of character assassins' name on it. That gang of artistic incompetents can't produce anything creative, even just good, if you put a phaser on kill to their heads. I will have more to say about that later. And as always, I will bring you a totally different perspective than anywhere else. Now, as always, as always, we have excitement, adventure, and really wild things on tap tonight for the late Stardate. Excuse me. First, we're going to talk about XAI. I think I want to get that sucker done. Because, guys, I told you so. I told you so. I told you so. And I tried and got radio silence. Here we are now with you guys getting, investigated and sued by everybody. I told you so 3 months ago. Schmucks. And your attempts to fix it, by the way, are not nearly enough. We'll also talk about the future of Star Trek, of which Starfleet Academy plays a role, and we will discuss why Starfleet Academy is and why it doesn't work. And I think it's time for me to weigh in more explicitly about how Star Trek isn't woke, and it never has been. And the people who say otherwise are gaslighting abusers. And I'll have some specific thoughts about fans becoming gaslighting abusers. We will talk about Minneapolis, the deaths, the illegal events, and the people who contributed to it. We will, in that vein, also have a Gen X fable at about the same time. We may, or may not, get to my pitch for the DC film universe. That's what I would call the DC FU, if they called me and said, yep, we get screwed again. We want you to try it, Bill. But, as always, the show is largely viewer-driven. If you type something in chat, well, I'm almost certainly going to respond. I will not kick you from the chat unless you are, overtly trolling or something. And I will not kick you just for disagreeing with me. You can talk about pretty much anything you like. Around here, we tend to like science fiction, fantasy, horror, superheroes, and other related genres. However, because politics has invaded and generally ruined our fandoms, we can't help but have a foot in politics. But aside from some personal subjects, and I'll let you know if you hit one, almost anything is fair game. You can agree, disagree, tell me that I'm the hoopiest of froods, or a goram fracking drenet. Just try to keep your language family friendly in the process. And so, with that out of the way, let's get ready to rumble. Okay. Got to talk about XAI first. These guys are a bunch of idiots. I tried, guys. I really did. I have to look at something here for my things like the stream health and analytics, and it doesn't look like I, actually have any viewers. But that's cool. I will still talk without them, and you guys can pop in when you pop in. Let me look over at stream settings. This thing is, I tell you, I hate this damned YouTube control panel. The more and more I freaking have to use it. It's just a pain in the ass. But it's what you get with YouTube. All right, let's go and talk about some stuff. Now, I really didn't write a lot about much of the topics I'm going to talk about. So this is very much off the cusp. This is very much just me getting it out there. XAI. Well, if you've been with me for very long, you know that after I really got to know where we are, thanks to my late friend, Marshall Presnell, after he got me through to understanding where we are with AI and what it really is, I started fooling. As you know, if you watch back a few shows, I started fooling with Grok's ability to create photorealistic images and later on video. I showed some of the images on that show. I'm not sure that I shouldn't have. I maybe should cut those out and re-upload it maybe, because I'm not sure what my legal exposure is for not doing it. But I have now created, untold thousands of pictures of largely Scarlett Johansson, because Grok seems to have it seems to be really good at rendering Scarlett Johansson. It's just amazing. It's really good at her. So I usually have used her as a test case for everything, and I can make her wear anything I want, in any setting, doing anything, but not up to the point of pornography. Corn. Up to the point of corn. And some people that I know who do this sort of stress testing tell me that not only is it capable of doing that, it's capable of doing some really horrific things in terms of gory self-harm and violence. Once Marshall, thank you, Marshall, had walked me through to where we are with AI, I started paying attention. And I started paying attention by talking to the AIs and by, trying to see how it is that you create legally actionable images. And how you spread them and all that. I started paying a lot of attention to it. And I came to the conclusion that I had to let XAI know. So for 3 months, 3 solid months, I tried every avenue of communication that I had. Every single one. I tried connecting with him with Elon Musk on X. Yeah, fat chance of that. I started trying to connect with anybody who on the platform who seemed to be connected with X. When Musk would announce somebody new and repost his post, I would go back to the original and tell him. I did this for 3 months. I even said registered mail to XAI's actual office, their address, which they keep pretty secret. But after so many years in computer science, I have walked away with a set of skills, a very particular set of skills. If I want to find you, you will be found. So I sent them registered mail. I sent it to Elon Musk via various businesses that he had, but I was most interested specifically in XAI. So that means I had somebody at that office who both picked up who got the mail and then was authorized to sign for it. Now, I don't think that Elon Musk is reading this mail. I think it falls under the heading of excessive fan mail and chaff, and probably nothing ever got told about it. But I did try. Oh, I tried. So now here we are 3 months later, and the rest of the world has caught up to what I knew since forever. And now it's going to bite XAI just like I told them that it would. Sorry, XAI. Told you so. I told you and told you and told you, and you ignored me, and here we are. You guys have a serious problem. This is a potentially business-ending problem. You need to take this ability out somehow, because if you don't, every single member of CAA, all of CAA's clients, and I don't mean they're going to get together and do a class action suit against you. I mean each and every one of them is going to be advised by their agents at CAA, who have attorneys who have more time than God because they're getting paid by CAA. So they're going to say, okay, we're going to have lawsuits, but it'll be individual lawsuits by every single CAA person that's being represented, every single one, and they'd probably win. And then you get to the members of SAG-AFTRA, and there is some crossover, of course, CAA, but only at the real high level. You get to SAG-AFTRA. Well, if they're smart, they'll do the same thing. The union will suggest that the members individually, not collectively, individually have lawsuits against XAI, and they'll probably win. So you're looking at a situation where if it was me, if I was smart about doing it, if they asked me, I would say yes. Yes, what you need to do is do individual lawsuits, 1,000 of them or so. That will do two things. That will drive XAI into the ground, multiple things. Drive XAI sort of into the ground, maybe bankrupt them, and at the same time have very, very bad optics for things that Elon Musk is doing. So this is one of those things that if they really carry it through, if they really understand, it's going to have massive ramifications. I don't know what you do about it, and I think they tried. Here's what happened. Night before last, they made some new change. I don't know what it was. XAI, I mean, Grok can't identify it for me, and XAI doesn't know. But what happened was, from my years of experience as a computer scientist, what I think happened was this. Night before last, let's see, was it yesterday? God, yeah, I guess it was yesterday. So it was, no, it wasn't. It was night before last. I think they put in some kind of new patch, probably as a response to getting investigated by everybody from local state governments all the way out to other nations like in the EU. They realized what this thing can do. And so I think what they probably did was they tried to do some kind of patch to put guardrails up where there had been none before. But the fact that they have no experience with putting up or pulling down the guardrails meant that this patch went sour on them real fast. By 6 a.m., Grok was unavailable on multiple platforms, and the image generation was just totally unavailable. Well, I talked to Grok about it when it happened and explaining my experience and saying, I think what probably happened was they put in a bad patch, and that caused the problem because they were worried about all the images and stuff you were creating. And Grok agreed that that was probably the most likely thing. So now they're in a process of having to go back to a previous version or something, but with an LLM that isn't even exactly what you're doing. It's really complicated, really weird, and it's really hard for me to explain. Suffice to say, it is exceptionally difficult to go backwards with an LLM. So, but if I was them, I would be looking and saying, okay, we made a change. It broke things. Let's move back. The other thing is this is just a bit of free advice. Free advice to those of you at XAI, because I have a sneaking suspicion that you are not doing your development properly. Here's how it works. Forget DevOps. That is a dangerous thing that nobody should have ever adopted. You need to get rid of DevOps. Forget about DevOps. Eject the entire thing and move people around accordingly. Because here's what you need to do. This was not an unknown thing to do not that long ago. But DevOps moved in, screwed it all up, and now everything tends to turn to crap. Here's what you need to do, guys, at XAI. It's real simple. You have three environments. You have development, QA, and then production. You have those three environments. Okay, here's how this works. You have your developers, the people who write your code, your software, whatever, or maybe the trainers as well when you get into an LLM. And you put them right up on the only on the development servers, only on that, development side. They can do what they want in here, and it doesn't affect QA, and it doesn't affect production. So you let them go over here, fill with it as much as they want, do what they need to in order to get things working right, exactly what they want, added features, deleted features, whatever. When that is done and they think it's all cool, then you move it over into QA, quality assurance. And then you kind of cross your fingers and hope that the guys in development actually did everything necessary so that dropping it is relatively easy. If it isn't, you hand it back to them and say, work on it again. When we tried to drop it into QA, it didn't work right. So eventually they get one, and you get one that works. You drop it down into QA. QA means quality assurance, which means that basically there's a team of people whose job it is to look at the new features, make sure they work, make sure something doesn't break, and make sure everything seems to be working well. After you get done with QA, then you should know you've got something that should work fine in production, and you put it there. Now, here's the key in doing this, right? We're getting through this multi-step process to stop and see if it works. Stop and see if it works. That's really important. You got to stop, see if it works, stop, see if it works. And as long as it passes through that stop, see if it works, and see it work over and over, then you can try putting it on production. I don't think that's what they did. I think they have a DevOps environment. The DevOps people working their ass off to get this patch out that maybe would work, and they gave it their approval, and it went straight into production. DevOps is a dumb idea, guys. I'm sorry, it's a dumb idea. You need to have Dev, which is the developer environment, QA for quality assurance, and then production. You've gone through two different layers so that you should know by the time you put it out, everything is working. But no, you guys were busting your ass because you're getting sued from here to the EU, and you needed to get some kind of patch out, and you did a slipshod job of it. You didn't, right? Your DevOps thing didn't work, and you put it in production, and it broke. Now, here's the other thing you can do in your development team. I've seen this done. I think this is the best thing in the universe. It's essentially building. You'd be building out your website, right? And you could do something that screw ups egregiously enough that it would break the website if it was ever put out there. So what they do is they consistently rebuild and rebuild on the development side, rebuild, and people are adding things or taking things out, and they rebuild. And at some point, the build may break. Something somebody did was a change was too big, broke things. And your automated stuff figured that out. Okay, it broke the build. Well, that turns on a light. This is the most amazing thing I ever saw. A rotating flashing light, like the kind they used to put on, old police cars. It was rotating, it was red. They stuck it up to the ceiling. Anytime the build broke, that thing would go off, and you'd hear devs say things like, the build is broken, who did it? Because it was always a question of what change they'd made. That's a good development environment, guys. It really should. DevOps is such I don't know. I understand the developers want to have more control, but they shouldn't have it. The people who are like sysadmins should have control over what's on the server. Typically, they need to be identical from one to each other. So they need to be the same thing on every single one. DevOps breaks that by creating a whole environment where they muck around with stuff and then put it into production. Bad idea. You guys, XAI, listen to me closely. If you want to fix stuff like this, you need you need Dev, QA, and prod. You've got to have those three. And when you go through a patch, specifically when you're trying to do one on the fly, like you seem to have been doing with this one, well, you're still going to have to run it through all three things. You don't get to go to QA unless it works in Dev. You don't get to go to prod if it doesn't work in QA and Dev. That's just the way it is. So you guys need to revamp what you're doing. I understand that Elon Musk has been rather quiet about this, particularly considering that forever he was pushing the benefits of Grok and its image and video capability. But you guys have screwed it up. Elon, if you're listening to me, again, I bet your model for development isn't working right. What you need to do is what I described, a 3-tier development model. Dev, QA, prod. Forget this DevOps crap. They'll kill you every time, and I bet they did this time. All right, so as I say, it's one of these times I get to say to a nice big company run by a rich individual who should know exactly what is going on with his systems. XAI? Elon? I told you so. Okay, let us talk for a moment. Don't have a lot of people out there, but I kind of have an order for this, so I'll be ad-libbing most of this too. But let us talk about the future of Star Trek. Whenever I see something going on in anything, whether it's current events or even our genres, I usually like to try to look to history for examples. So if I can look back in history and see the same thing happening, I can say, okay, maybe that's going to happen now. And I've done that with Star Trek. The future of Star Trek is not bright. The future of Star Trek is mirroring DC Comics. DC Comics had an interesting thing going on in 1985. This is a side quest to explain the DC Comics part of it. DC Comics had a problem in 1985. They had multiple universes. They had a multiverse, and they had multiple universes in which different characters were appearing. They weren't all appearing just on the same Earth. Some were on Earth 1, which is the main universe that we knew about at that time. Some were on Earth 2, and there were some that were even off on other Earths. Some who were very, very similar to the Here As We Knew, and some that were totally dissimilar and taking a totally different path. It was a fun way for them to screw with what if, really. It was what if before it was a what if. They called them imaginary tales. Anyway, they had all this stuff going on prior to 1985. And then somebody said, and I don't know who, and it seemed like a good idea at the time. I thought it was a decent enough idea at the time. They said, okay, is there some way we can collapse all of this into a single universe? Enter the big cross-title company event, Crisis on Infinite Earths. And this is something that comes up with respect to DC Comics. There is pre-crisis and there's post-crisis. Pre-crisis includes basically all of the characters we saw originally and what their backstories were and what their adventures were, even if they were like the 1940s and their adventures were sometimes a little simplistic. They were still there. But then we got to what they did in Crisis on Infinite Earths. And they said, okay, what we want to do is figure out a way to collapse this down to a singular universe, which they did. And then we're going to, at the same time we do this, to make sure that the audience knows that we really mean it this time, we're going to kill off some beloved characters. In this case, the Flash and Supergirl. Yeah, the Flash died saving the world in the mainline universe. It's why Wally West became the Flash, because of the inspiration he had from Barry Allen. So it's there. So then they said, all right, well, let's see if we can put this together. So they made this thing where they put it all together and it's all in one universe. But that means a whole bunch of backstory got lost. Because, of course, Superman originally began in 1938. So his backstory on Earth 2 included something from 1938 until 1985. It was a long backstory where he got changed. That is the main thing that differentiated Earth 2, where all of these Golden Age superheroes were, from Earth 1, because they were allowed to age and die in some cases, which was okay because you're talking about characters from the 40s. People don't usually have the same kind of emotional attachment to them. Anyway, they went ahead and they collapse this thing down, and all of a sudden, all of these stories that people had loved when they were children or something like that were suddenly thrown onto the ash heap of history. It is annoying as hell. If you have ever been, and they do it a lot now, DC Comics has now gone through multiple reboots. They have killed off multiple characters, most of whom figure out a way to come back. And as I say, I don't know how many reboots. To make things worse, whenever they get a new creative team on any given title, that creative team will say, this is how I want to write Superman, for example. This is how I want to write Superman, and I'm not going to pay attention to anything that came before. This is just me writing about Superman. This is the way I want to do it. And so you totally ignore the entire rest continuity of this shared universe. You rewrite sometimes his origin story multiple times. They have done this multiple times now. Anytime a new creative team gets in, they screw with it to the point where it doesn't resemble what the original was. And so it's basically a series of retcons. Retcon, 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 retcon after retcon. And so now we're here at DC, and nobody cares about their comics anymore. The whole comics industry is in a slump, but DC is particularly in problems. And their most recent ones, they've screwed up by virtue. Sorry, I'm looking at something over here where my comments are going to be. By virtue of, oh gosh, I forgot where it was. Anyway, we're seeing all of that in DC constantly. They can't get it right. I mean, they'll do something. And the thing is, the people who are writing comics right now, people seem to think there's some kind of great writers and auteurs and stuff. I'm sorry. The last truly great writer and auteur was Alan Moore. As my comic store owner at the time that Watchmen was coming out said, Alan Moore can write a show about a pile of crap and make it interesting. And he was right. Alan Moore was really the last auteur and extraordinary storyteller in comics. Everyone we've had since then thinks they're extraordinary. They get fans somehow to believe they're extraordinary. But when you look at their work, you find it's just totally derivative. They're taking stories that were told originally in the Golden Age, rewriting them for modern times. Guys, that's not actually creativity. That's just retconning. It's not creating something new that people can enjoy. You're retconning stories that people enjoyed in the past. Nobody likes that. Nobody likes that at all. What you do is you leave your past alone and you go forward. Duh. And now we're seeing the same thing in Star Trek. We have one outright reboot. We've got one we know for sure. One outright reboot. Now, by all accounts in the press, we're about to get a second outright reboot because 2009, that got to sucking and they couldn't make any money on any other movies. So they said, let's do it all over again. So they're going to have two reboots now. We have a reimagining that started in 2017 and continues to the present day, where Alex Kurtzman and his hack fraud of character assassins are writing just junk. And let me explain to you about this. There's two things that they don't get. They do not get the tone of Star Trek, which is a completely enlightened and totally different future, very, very positive. The general assumption is the way that you can describe it is the thing that differentiates Star Trek from any other science fiction is that it has this optimistic view of the future. It says, no, we're going to make it just fine. In fact, not only are we going to make it fine, we're going to make it incredible. It's going to be amazing. The future is awesome. It did not ever fall victim to this notion that you have to be nihilistic. Today's Star Trek is nihilistic. And it's interesting because somewhere after Discovery being in the same general time frame that they're currently trying to operate in, with the exception of Starfleet Academy. But they went off on a tangent. Don't remember what I was going to say. Anyway, we've had two outright reboots. This reimagining since 2017. They say it's in the same universe as the 1966-2005 franchise, but there's no possible way that it can be. It is not in any way connected to that by events or anything else. It largely contradicts many, many, many things that were established in that 1966 to 2005. And don't try telling me that Star Trek, when it was originally starting, did things like had the United Earth Space Probe Agency rather than the Federation. They were trying to create an entirely new universe, not tag along with someone else's. So that is not any kind of an argument. And yes, they did occasionally, particularly when they were universe building at the beginning, would occasionally have things that contradict each other in terms of what they said about the ship or things like that. Yeah, happens when you're building a universe. When you already have one here for you, you don't have to do that. Anyway, the people who write for modern Star Trek aren't very good. To me, the most telling thing is that they appear to have never grown up. Their work is juvenile and derivative. They say that it's more adult, but it's not. See, here's something that got told to me by a woman who was 30 years old, and I was 20, and we really hit it off together, and we were spending, it was, great in the sack and everything. At one point, unsurprisingly, that was like, okay, I need more than just sex. And we were talking, and I don't remember the precise conversation, but she said, Bill, sex is just part of an adult relationship. And that sent me back. And I went, yeah, she's right. It's not the most important thing. It actually isn't. It's important, especially for men, don't get me wrong, but it's not the most important thing. So that was a wake-up call for me. It was my younger self, my horny younger self, being told, hey, listen, all this stuff that you're talking about here, I'm 10 years away from that. What you're doing here is just juvenile, and it's just not a big deal. And that's what Star Trek has become. It has become juvenile. I don't know why for certain. My guess, from watching the crap that Alex Kurtzman and that hack fraud Alex Kurtzman and his mafia of character assassins have done, what I have to assume is they themselves never really grew out of being adolescents, because their character development and interaction in terms of, the character interactions are rote at best. They are juvenile. There's nowhere that I can say was an adult relationship. You want an adult relationship? They're actually kind of boring when they work. That would be Miles O'Brien and his wife, Keiko, from Next Generation originally, and then his main character in Deep Space Nine. That was an adult couple dealing with adult problems. It wasn't just, I get to bang Miles tonight, and we're going to show some of it, or something like that, because it wasn't necessary. Everybody knew that in an adult relationship, you have sex. That's part of the deal. If you didn't, it wouldn't be like a romantic relationship. It would be like friends. So that's part of the deal, but it isn't the only thing. It's not the most important thing. And the guys who are running Star Trek now don't get that. They think that stopping the fun part of the story to sit and wallow in people's feelings, no matter who they are, is good storytelling. Let me tell you guys, it's not. It's not. When people go back to look at this show in 10 years, they're going to go, wow, that aged badly. I knew exactly what era that was from. For the longest time with the original series, and certainly with Next Gen, it was more or less timeless. The language alone in anything from 1966 to 2005, the use of language alone, and by the way, this is something the former stewards of the franchise, who, when it was actually good, said. The language is too much like modern slang. It's not language that a professional would use. It's not language that we've ever seen Starfleet officers use. They're smarter than that, frankly. They're smarter than that. They know how to speak with some authority, which means they're not going to run around cursing, and they're not going to be using early 21st century slang, and they're not going to be like the people that you have even put in these shows. And then there's the fact that it completely, it puts everything from 1966 to 2005 totally into question in terms of whether it actually happens or not. We are in the middle of a big, giant retcon for Star Trek. It is a big, giant retcon with two outright reboots of the universe, one that's already happened, one that's coming, and then one that should be an outright reboot. If that hack fraud, Alex Kurtzman, and his mafia of character assassins had said, we're working in an alternate universe. We're taking 1966, 2005, going to put it up on a shelf somewhere. That's backstory to inform what we're doing now, but we're not going to touch it. Just leave it alone. If they'd done that, I wouldn't have hated it so much. I mean, I would have hated it because they don't get the optimistic tone, but I wouldn't have hated it for crapping all over everything that I used to love about that franchise. And make no mistake, I was heavily into it. My first memory is of Star Trek, the original series, when it was first airing on NBC, the episode of Private Little War, specifically when the Mugatu jumps off of the rocket onto Kirk's back. That's when things I start to be able to remember. I've been with this franchise forever. And at, 2005, I can put the cutoff line there because everything that came afterwards was some level of stupid, married with lots of cool special effects, or juvenile, where they're just like banging something that's an important story point. Guess what, guys? As I said, sex is just part of an adult relationship. It isn't all of the relationship, and you don't know that. Precisely why they don't know that eludes me, except possibly that this crop of the stewards for this franchise, they themselves have not grown up. They themselves have something of a mindset for, that sort of stuff. They just haven't grown up. And so they can't write adult material. And they don't know anything about science, and so they can't write anything scientific about Star Trek. It just doesn't work. It's stupid. So I think our future for Star Trek is already starting to play out. We are seeing it happen now, and it is mirroring the comic book ones. What's going to happen, and what has already started to happen, is we'll get reboots. Multiple reboots will come through, and we will get stories that completely contradict not only the 1966-2005 franchise like they've done, but anything that was made recently. You could get a new creative team on some show, and they'll just immediately throw out what came before and start writing something that they think is good. Because we're seeing that in comics. We've seen it for decades, since 1985. So, hey, Lisa, how's it going? And Debbie, glad to be here. Cool, Lisa. Thanks a lot. I'm happy to have you around. Talking the future of Star Trek right now. I'm about to be finished with it, actually. So, as I say, we have writers who are themselves arrested in their development as teenagers or something. They're the ones who think that lots of horny Gen X, horny Gen Zs are busy having fun at Starfleet Academy. Let me speak briefly about that piece of crap. I have not watched it. I have not watched it whatsoever. I will not watch it because I have not watched anything that has that hack fraud Alex Kurtzman's name on it or his mafia of character assassins. Yep, Debbie, I'm just about to go into that. His mafia of character assassins. So I haven't watched anything made by those schmucks since season 1, episode 5 of Star Trek Picard. And that one where they took a beloved character on screen, ripped his eyeball out very graphically, and then killed him, despite the fact that in the 24th century, we know they can fix eyes. But they ripped it out graphically just because they could, because they didn't have any censors behind them, either at the network level or the studio, to tell them, no, this is Star Trek, you schmuck. What are you talking about, ripping someone's eyeball out graphically? Are you insane? That should have been what was said, but they didn't because they don't have anybody to say no to them. That's the sort of crap they make, and that's why I haven't watched it. So I waited around for the returns to come in on Starfleet Academy, and it was just as I had expected. You could tell right from the damn trailer. This was going to be a story about Xennials in space. That's all it was, and that's what everybody is telling me. That's it. Everybody I ever watch, that thing's got a crappy Rotten Tomatoes score, which is pretty much unheard of because they manipulate that stuff like mad. And I'm sure that Paramount is not happy. Everybody hates it right out of 3 or 4 episodes. And it doesn't surprise me. If they were going to do Starfleet Academy, and I do not object to them doing Starfleet Academy at all, anytime they've ever brought it up, as long as it wasn't something that was a replacement for an original series movies, which happened once. They almost made Starfleet Academy rather than having the original series cast back because Shatner and Nimoy were costing them a lot of money. So they thought, all right, well, let's see if we can move back. And we'll go to Starfleet Academy. Excuse me. We'll go to Starfleet Academy, and we can do some stories with early Kirk Spock there. Didn't fly at the time. Might today. But in any case, what they've got going here is a complete misunderstanding of how an organization like Starfleet operates. Because from my perspective, if you're going to do Starfleet Academy, it is Annapolis in space. It is West Point in space. It is the probably a very regimented kind of existence. You have a bunk room with probably three, a room with probably 3 roommates. You get to know everything about Starfleet in terms of its history. All of these things that you would ordinarily see at a place like Annapolis, like West Point. Now, those 2 places are explicitly military in nature. And so what they get is a training to be good military officers. Starfleet is largely an exploration body that also serves some military functions when necessary. And sometimes those have included entire wars. But that's not their primary focus, and certainly wasn't, say, when in the 23rd and 24th centuries. We saw Starfleet on occasion, and we didn't see stupid Xennials running around doing things. That was dumb. Or stupid, it was just dumb. What I would want to see if they were making a Starfleet Academy movie, I think you could make a great one, or a series. I think you could make a really good one. If you look and you go, okay, it's like Annapolis in space, and then go watch the guys at Annapolis for a while. And then say to yourself, all right, okay, this is what we need to show, but maybe with a little less military feel to it. Yes, there has to be some, but we don't get salutes. Dress uniforms are very, very infrequently used. While it is paramilitary in structure, it's not military as a rule. So a lot of the military things that you would ordinarily see in Annapolis wouldn't happen. But you're still looking at an extraordinarily difficult course of study, one that requires, an extraordinary devotion to doing it. Probably there are people, for example, if you want a story, there's probably people who would go to Starfleet Academy and just burn out and couldn't cut it. And they just left. That could happen. Somebody just flunk out. There's a story you could write. You could have a series where for a season you got a character everybody thinks is great, but he's having trouble getting along, and then all of a sudden, well, I'm sorry, dude, you have flunked out. Bye-bye, and we never see him again. That's the sort of story you could make. What they appear to be making is idiocy, and it doesn't surprise me. The whole franchise has been on a headed down since 2009, and I think I know why. And I hate coming to this conclusion. I really do. But I think I know why. It's just simply this. Gen X are much better technologists than we are artists. And I say this because I have a sort of a cutoff line at about 2005. Because after that is when Gen X started to come into our own and really start to take control of things like entertainment. Prior to that, and this is something my generation doesn't get, and I'll talk about some of it, but my generation likes to talk about Gen X music, Gen X TV shows, blah, blah, blah. But if you really look at it, most of it, there was some music being made by Gen Xers, but most of the time, it was boomers making stuff with us as the target demographic. It wasn't really Gen Xers who were doing it. Gen Xers didn't get into doing it in a real way till around about 2005, the end of the franchise of Star Trek from 1966 to 2005. After that, and I don't think it's Star Trek that, that I can say was the cause of it. I think what happened after that is my generation started to get in control. And we suck at it. We really, really kind of suck at it. My perfect example is Charlie's Angels. That was a mediocre TV series in the 1970s that had precisely 6 things going for them, and they were all attached to 3 hot chicks. If you had tried to make that TV series with men, forget it. The whole deal was, the whole premise, hot chicks solve crimes. That's the whole deal. It was mediocre. It was not like there was any, script that came out of that and said, "Oh, this is amazing. This is Emmy stuff. Let's give this an Emmy. That'd be great." No, that show never had anything like that. In fact, there was I don't remember, some kind of squabble with Farrah Fawcett, and something happened there. But ultimately, it's just 3 hot chicks solving crimes. That's it. That's the whole thing. Generation X has remade that thing twice. Not once, twice. And one of them has a sequel. That's a show that never deserved to be remade, reimagined, or anything else. That show, like many, many others, should have been left on the ash heap of history. It is a testament to how Gen X, we think about stuff when we're little. Charlie's Angels was around when I was alive, when I was young. In the 1970s. I remember some of it. I certainly remember the poster with Farrah Fawcett Majors on it. So it was just mediocre. There was nothing out of that was coming out. It was just 3 hot chicks that you got to watch every week. We remade it twice. What would be going through our brains that we would think this is a good idea? Well, we do this with everything. We do it with everything. Look at the 2025 Superman film. That thing is tolerable. It's tolerable. As somebody who's been around with this character since I was born, almost, I find it tolerable. It's not good. It's not horrible. But I don't need any more CGI kaiju. I've seen CGI kaiju. We really started doing photorealistic CGI kaiju about 1994 with Jurassic Park. It was impressive then. It's occasionally impressive now when they do certain things. But just another big kaiju for Superman to fight. Who cares? Don't care. It has no heart, that I've been able to tell. The leads for Lois and Superman are good enough, but it has no heart. It doesn't have the heart of the only good Superman movie, which was Superman from 1978. That's the only really great Superman movie. The one where they knocked it out of the park by hitting every note just correctly. Every Superman movie after that gets compared to it, and with good reason. It is a fantastic film. So I look at this, and my generation is going, yeah, Superman was great. Let's make one that's like that, only we fix it. And in fixing it, that usually means we take all the humanity out of it, or we just substitute the humanity for youth and diversity. It's what we do. We do this every time. We have destroyed the Star Wars franchise. We have destroyed Star Trek. We have destroyed Indiana Jones. We have destroyed Doctor Who. All people run by Gen Xers, or maybe a little bit older, but I'd have everything in common with them in terms of life experience. These are people who don't know what they're doing. You can look at it, too, from the perspective of where is our Godfather? Where's the Gen X Godfather? Nowhere to be seen. Where is Brian De Palma? Where is Apocalypse Now? Where is our Gene Roddenberry to create new universes for us? Where is our George Lucas to get the question of mythic, correct behind his sci-fi? Where's the John Carpenters? Where are the Marlon Brandos? Where are, anybody in the history of cinema that was any good? Where do we have one in Gen X? I'll wait. all the Gen X comedians that are coming out, and the guys who are doing reactions to younger people doing something. Yes, this is a shots fired. I defy you to find me, the Gen X Brian De Palma. I defy you to find me, the Gen X Gene Roddenberry, coming up with a new universe on his own, off top of his head, not stealing anybody else's, but coming up with one that he himself was making. Where is our Gene Roddenberry? Where is our George Lucas, a man who could say, I would really like to make Flash Gordon, and then have King Features Syndicate say, no, I don't think so. And then he says, fine, I'll make my own. And then he comes up with something that turns out to be kind of mythic in nature. Where is our George Lucas? All of those people, all of those directors, all of those movies, where's even the guys who used to make stupid, big, dumb action movies in the 80s, right? We have a jillion of those things. In the 80s, a couple of things matured such that we could start doing weird-ass stunts and all kinds of things. So where is it? Where are all of those people? Well, we don't have them. What we do is we have people who do reboots, reimaginings, and they do it badly. And they suck all of the life and the heart out of it. So, as I say, you can look at Superman 2025 versus Superman 1978. Radically different films. And because the 78 one wants to do the humanity side of things, whereas the 2025 one, I don't know what it's trying to do other than introduce a new cinematic universe. So this is what we're going to see continuing to go forward in Star Trek. More reboots, more shows, or even individual seasons or episodes that don't line up with any prior, events, because it's just going to be what the current people running that show may be, even if they're on their way through to somewhere else. They're going to change it around because they'll think it needs to be fixed. And we'll see that over and over. We'll see multiple reboots to try to, get the timeline into something that makes sense again, except at the same time, you're going to be gaslighting. Let me talk about that. I hate retcons. I really do. I almost exclusively hate them. Not because you can't do it right. You can do it right. I know of places where you could do it right, but because they almost always do it wrong. When they do it wrong, it's for reasons like in DC, when they're collapsing their universe into their multiverse into a single universe for purposes of telling the story. That just didn't turn out to be good at all. It was a really bad idea. But starting with those guys and killing off beloved characters, as they did in Crisis on Infinite Earths, opened up a floodgate. And now I have not watched the last season of Star Trek Picard. A couple of my friends tell me it's okay, but I caught one episode of The Strange New Worlds, and it crapped all over prior lore. And I thought, okay, that's it. I don't need to watch any more of this stuff. It's only going to ever piss me off. It's a series that intentionally goes around crapping on what came before, so because the current showrunner thinks it needs to be fixed. Keep in mind that the current showrunner is a disgusting little pervert named, what's his name? Akiva Goldsman. This is a man who wanted to put incest into Star Trek Picard. If you watch the first season, and I did through episode 5, the first season shows a pair of Romulan siblings here and there. The Romulan siblings are extremely affectionate with each other. And according to a social media post that this pervert Akiva Goldsman put out there, his intent was, in fact, that these two characters were brother and a sister, and they were having relations with each other. And then I read a transcript of somebody's podcast where the woman who played the female half of this family-related relationship, she said, yeah, that's what we were told to do. We were told that, yes, they are family members sharing a great deal with each other. I don't want to say the word on YouTube because I don't know if it'll get caught. Brother and sister involved in a relationship that, should it occur today, people would be going to jail probably. So that's what he wanted to have. And that's what the actors said. Apparently, at some point, that's what the actor said. At some point, the actor also said at some point that they came down from on high and said, no, we're not going to really do it all the way. Play it, but we're never going to really show it the way we kind of thought. But that little pervert wanted to put familial sexual relations into Star Trek. Now think about it again, because that dude is running Strange New Worlds. That man wanted to put a brother and sister having intimate relations into Star Trek. That's the sort of crap you're dealing with. I don't know where anybody would get an idea. What are we, Game of Thrones in Star Trek? Are you insane? That's where they don't really get the tone at all. They're all nihilists. And the problem with being a nihilist, trying to write a story that is supposed to be something that's uplifting, is you can't do it. You can't do optimism if you don't believe that it's possible, at least. Or if you can't commit to playing by the rules inside of the Star Trek sandbox. So that familial relations thing was utterly ridiculous. I'm glad somebody somewhere said, we're not going to go all the way with that. I'm glad somebody somewhere that said that. I don't know who it was. I suspect it was somebody at the studio level, considering that Alex Kurtzman and his mafia of character assassins are utterly incompetent and probably would have liked to have seen it. Let me just say something real informally, too. Maybe it puts me in legal jeopardy. I don't know. But when you have people who want to write that sort of thing, they really want to. They think it's a good thing. Isn't this great? We can put familial, intimate relationships into Star Trek. Isn't that great? Isn't that wonderful? And all I can think about is those guys sitting at home watching their own stuff when it's finally completed and furiously masturbating. That's what I get. Whenever I hear about crap like that, I have to wonder, what kind of sick little puppy are you that you want to write that? That's pretty sick. And if you think that it's good, you're pretty sick. And you really start to make me wonder if there isn't something seriously psychologically wrong with you. My suggestion, by the way, Akiva Goldsman, is to go see therapy. See a therapist. Tell them that you have this penchant for wanting to see incest and writing your own little fanfics. Familial, intimate relationship. And you want to make your own little fanfic that costs $12 million an episode so that you can jerk off at night to it. That's what I'm starting to think with these guys. Anyhow, all that we're going to see from now on is endless reboots, because they will have gone the wrong direction. Endless bad writing, like the ones we're getting right now. They're just juvenile in nature and tend to crap on everything that came before. And then we'll have more reboots. And then we'll have more crappy writers. That'll go that way until there are no mum butts in the seats. And they're getting there. They're getting there. I've been with the franchise since 1967. I no longer care. I don't care at all. I do stuff like this from time to time, but I don't care. Not really. I don't care anymore. They made me not care. Somebody who's been with this from 1967, whose first memory is from Star Trek, and they made me not care. Good going, guys. Really smart move. Anyhow, what they're doing a lot of now is the retconning. And retconning actually is just gaslighting. Retconning is saying, what you read and saw saw before this didn't actually happen. Something else happened. We're getting rid of that. We're throwing away that story. Okay. I'm a guy who is, and all fans from my era, we all knew Spock's brain sucks. That is probably the worst episode of Star Trek. And you can put this up against something like The City on the Edge of Forever by Harlan Ellison and say, oh, yeah, wow, the same series that made The City on the Edge of Forever one of the best, if not the best episodes in the entire franchise to date. And they made Spock's brain. Wow. So we're like, can we just get rid of that one? Can we just take it away? But We don't do that. We are like, okay, they made stumbles from time to time. They made clunkers from time to time. They made lemons from time to time. That's just part of the series. You don't go screwing with it. You don't go then saying this never happened, that never happened, that never happened, etc. They're already in the middle of the biggest retcon in history. They're retconning James Kirk, as played by William Shatner, out of existence. They are currently remaking Star Trek. They're calling it being in the same continuity as 66 or 2005, but that's impossible. They are remaking Star Trek. They're telling us that what we saw before never happened. It's what happens now that happened. Well, guys, 5 years now, 10 years from now, whomever is running the franchise is going to do the same thing to you. And what 10 actual fans there are of this modern crap are going to be disappointed because all of a sudden their stories are going to be retconned out of existence, just like all of ours were. So, guys, retconning is gaslighting. It's exactly the same thing. You're saying this thing over here never happened. And you're going, yeah, but I remember it happening like that. No, this thing over here, it never happened. That's gaslighting. You say to somebody, this thing never happened. That's gaslighting. So we're getting gaslighting. And not just from there. Oh, my God. The cast and the crew for these shows that are made right now astonish me. Because they're like, I'm like, can you guys not take a bad review? Is it so bad for you to hear somebody criticize you? Because I like to say, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I was once an actor, but I wasn't a very good one. That's why I ended up in computer science ultimately. But when I look at this, I see all these people, like actors and stuff particularly, who are posting on social media, blaming the fans for things like how bad Starfleet Academy is. They're blaming the fans. The people, theoretically, that they're making this stuff for, they're blaming the fans. They're saying the fans are the ones that are the problem. Guys, everybody hates it. Is it not just possible that you made crap? Is it not just possible that what we're reacting to is, in fact, crap? Maybe it's not us. The common denominator here with all of this junk since 2017 has one source: Alex Kurtzman and his mafia of character assassins. These are the guys that have done this. So they're busy out there on social media talking about how we're all, homophobes and God knows what else, when science fiction fans are the most open-minded individuals that you'll ever meet. And we've been open-minded my entire life. This is, stuff like this is not a problem for us. We're fans of a TV series that when it first came out, having a Japanese man and a black woman and a Russian man and a Scottish man all on the same bridge, that told you mountains, because you just come out of World War II where the Japanese were an extraordinary enemy. In fact, my grandfather, who fought in World War II, for most of his life, he called them Japs. Most of his life. He eventually, towards the end of it, got to the point where he was calling them Japanese, but if you caught him at the right moment, he might say Jap. So that's why Star Trek was a big deal in the 1960s. It was taking people that we knew were having issues. There was the whole women's movement and, rights movement among black people and other minorities that were going on in that time. So to simply show them sitting on the bridge and doing their thing, and the whole issue of their race or whatever and their gender is non-issue. That was the statement he was making with that. Today, they make it by retconning, by showing us something that could not have happened in the Star Trek universe that we loved, telling us that it did. Okay, that's retconning. Going on to social media and bitching about how we're the problem because you're crap. That's gaslighting. I don't know how it is that these people can't just take a bad review. When I was an actor, we often got bad reviews, and the best thing you can do as an actor is kind of let it go off your shoulders. But at the same time, look at it and go, I wonder if they've maybe got a point about something I did. That's the way you handle it Or you get drunk, or you go and cry on somebody's shoulder, but you don't go out on social media and start saying, "Oh, it's the audience. It's my audience that's the problem. If only my audience were better, I would be making more money at this crap we're making." You're blaming your audience. Really, you're blaming your audience. You're saying something didn't happen. That's gaslighting. Classic gaslighting. That's just gaslighting. And along with that, you have actors and stuff going on out blaming the audience for the material. Gaslighting. That's gaslighting. Saying, "Oh, it's your fault. This is great stuff. You just, you don't know how to deal with it." Gaslighting. And gaslighting is absolutely a tactic for abuse. Those people think that they can sit around abusing us. People who work and on the shows that we used to love, that would like to see get better, they're sitting around telling us things didn't happen, telling us that what's good is bad, what's up is down, and they are just being abusive. All they're doing is trying to control us, which is what abuse actually is, trying to control us by altering the narrative from something that is real simple, "You made crap, go back and do something better next time," as opposed to, "We're not making crap. What are you talking about? This isn't crap. This is beautiful art. This is right next to Shakespeare. This is so good. What are you talking about?" Abuse. The people who are making Star Trek right now are some level of abusers, whether or not it's in their nature generally or because it's encouraged by that hack fraud Alex Kurtzman, but they are abusive. That is one of the biggest problems with these guys. They can't recognize when they're being abusive. They can't just take a bad review. They have to say, no, it's the audience who caused it to be bad. That is the dumbest freaking thing I ever heard in my life. Utterly ridiculous. No, the people who make Star Trek right now, and a lot of them who make other things, God, I heard things with Star Wars, The Last Jedi. I did about 30 seconds one time because some scholar had gone out and done a study that proved that the people who don't like, the people on social media and YouTube who don't like Star Wars The Last Jedi are actually Russian agents. Just ultimate form of attempted abuse. Saying that we're Russian agents if we don't happen to like some crap that's being put out. Anyhow, these guys are abusers, and unfortunately, they're encouraging fans to be abusers as well. There are fans who will do exactly the same thing. Gaslighting, other tactics with fans. They'll jump on, and this appears to be something in their souls, because it's not like they can, they're looking up the pathology of being an abuser. They just do it. It's one of the reasons we get the constant screaming on about things that are really rather inconsequential on social media. It's just screaming. And that feeds into something else that I want to talk about. We have these abusers, and I tell you what, man, everybody said, don't gatekeep Star Trek. Well, guess what? We should have been gatekeeping it all along. We should have been totally gatekeeping it and not letting in the fans who are utterly ridiculous, shills, stupid, and just wanting an argument for an argument's sake. We should never have let them in the door at all. So when you see them now, when I see them now, I'm not going to be nice about it anymore. I'm going to call them out. I'm going to tell you exactly, this person over here, yeah, idiot. That person over there, same thing. I'm going to call these guys out. I don't care anymore. I'm going to gatekeep, for God's sake. I'm going to keep out some of the riffraff. I'm going to take out some of the trash, or at least point out what corner the trash happens to be dumped in. Which somewhat leads me into my discussion of this guy. The abusing gaslighters and other things on social media and other places. There's, I think, Steve Shearer or something like that, who has talked about this, and I have otherwise liked a lot of his videos, but I unsubbed when I saw this one. He said that Star Trek has always been woke, and that is a constant refrain we hear from the would-be abusers on social media, that Star Trek was always woke. Well, it wasn't. Wokeism wasn't even a thing until a few years ago. Wokeism is a fascist ideology that intends to control your very thoughts. If you are in favor of being woke, that's what you're in favor of. You are a fascist who wants to control everyone's thoughts all by themselves. And here is why I'm quite dead certain that Gene Roddenberry would not have agreed with this.
Ultimate power in this world has always been one simple thing: the control and manipulation of minds.
That is exactly describing the woke. They wish to control and manipulate minds. They wish to control your very thoughts. That is what wokeism is. It is a fascist ideology that seeks to control your very thoughts. And not one moment would Gene Roddenberry have ever agreed with such a thing. I am a student of Gene Roddenberry. I probably know more about him by virtue of having known about him long before he had multiple and occasionally conflicting memoirs. I know the good, the bad, and the ugly. He would never have ever gone for what wokeism is. It would have been the utterly antithetical to what he believed, as I just showed you. You're talking about the control and manipulation of minds, something that Roddenberry would never have countenanced. The thing about it that confuses the modern woke is, I think, this. It has always had its roots as a liberal show, not the kind of liberal that we see today. The ones that I'm going to be talking about when I talk about what's going on in Minneapolis. Not those kinds of liberals. The kind of liberal that you would kind of point to, frankly, somebody like Rob Reiner. Geez, Rob, horrible what happened to you, buddy. Rob Reiner, when he played the character everyone remembers as Meathead on All in the Family, he was liberal. Maybe some of what he said didn't make a hell of a lot of sense if you really knew something about human nature, but he was liberal. He was not trying to control everyone's thoughts. He would occasionally try to change Archie's, but that was kind of pointless exercise of futility for him. But he was a liberal. He was a guy that, I have a very good friend, a couple of them that are liberals, a very old one that's a liberal. And we just get along because we know that we're not going to see eye to eye on everything, but it's not a big deal. He's a liberal in that respect. He's a liberal in the way that Tim Pool was a liberal once, by the standards of the scale used. It's why Bill Maher was once a liberal by the scale used at that time. The scales changed dramatically. And what's confusing people now as they come up is they see this and they go, oh, look, Star Trek, it was woke before its time. And no, it was liberal before its time. Totally different thing. If you're trying to find wokeness in Star Trek, you won't find it, because wokeness is a fascist ideology that seeks to control your very thoughts. Roddenberry would never have done such a thing. However, as my longtime viewers know, I'm something of a historian of fandom, of science fiction fandom. Not science fiction itself, although I have watched, read, and listened to quite a lot of science fiction over the decades. And you can go backwards, way backwards in time, to see what the genesis of science fiction, generally leaning towards the left, where it came from. It's a fascinating place because it's not necessarily in the literature that was being made in 1930s. It was about something wholly different. There was a science fiction club in New York City. I think it was called the New York Science Fiction Club. And a bunch of them broke away. A bunch of the membership broke away and formed the New York Futurians. And that's because they believed that science fiction should be more socialist and communist. Again, this is the beginning of the 20th century. They believe that that's what science fiction should concentrate on, socialism and communism, and how those will benefit humanity in the future. That was the whole reason that they split away. The New York Futurians, that's why they split away. And the Futurians' membership was fascinating in as much as it had many of the people that we would later come to consider giants as their membership. People like Isaac Asimov was a member of the New York Futurians, probably the most prolific writer in human history. And if you look at his stuff, it tends to lean that way. But again, these were broken away rather explicitly so that they could encourage having communism and socialism in science fiction. Star Trek is absolutely a beneficiary of that general movement in writers. If you look at the literature that comes, the good literature that comes in with science fiction, starting from the 1930s on, you're going to see this push, particularly for socialism and stuff like that. And it's why on Star Trek, it is a cashless society where apparently food, clothing, and shelter are non-issue. By the time you get to the 24th century, Earth is explicitly some kind of a utopia, and anybody can have anything they want. Which, if you consider the device the replicator, that's kind of the Deus Ex Machina for that. That you can go, okay, yeah, you can get to a cashless post-scarcity society with a device that'll let you make anything, out of thin air. So, yeah. Star Trek is definitely a descendant of that general line of being liberal or leaning towards socialism. But maybe in Star Trek we kind of got there, but most of the time it's a function of the fact that for decades and decades the people coming out of the New York Futurians turned into some of the most influential people that would ever be in science fiction literature, and quite possibly science fiction throughout it, period. So Star Trek is not woke. And anybody who tells you that, by the way, ask them, what the hell are you talking about? Because, wokeism is a fascist philosophy that it intends to control the minds of everyone by force, if necessary, as we are currently seeing in ongoing things that are happening in current events. We clearly, those guys need to be held accountable. The ones who are in Star Trek fandom who are busy trying to, gaslight us into thinking that Star Trek was something that it wasn't. And those of us been around long enough know it wasn't. It was never woke. Star Trek is never woke. If you're woke, come back from the dark side. You are, in fact, the antagonist of your story. So, I talked about gaslighting. Here's one we can talk about. Oh, everybody's talking about this. The stuff going on in Minneapolis right now. Okay, I want to be really, really clear. I don't want anyone ever to die. If there is someone at fault and this death was totally negligent, then I want that person held accountable, brought to justice, and potentially put on trial for their lives. That's what I want to see happen with anyone who intentionally or accidentally might kill someone. That said, I don't want to make any real conclusions right now. The information that I'm seeing is fragmentary. It isn't enough for me to make much of a conclusion on. And what video exists tends to be very low res. And my tools cannot upgrade it to a higher resolution in any way that's reasonable, that you could say, yes, this is definitely what your upgraded thing shows is definitely what happened. It's not high enough resolution that I would trust that to video AI at all. So I want these people found. If they've done something, I want them put on trial for their lives. That's what I want done with anybody who would kill someone, commit, an unaliving, either intentionally or by accident. You need to bring those people to accountability. So if there's some of that going on there, I want them brought to accountability. Absolutely. By the same token, the whole damned thing there with all of these protesters and people getting shot, and one woman who was so, I'm sorry, lady, it's stupid as hell to pick up a flash grenade at all. You need to just stay the hell away. I don't know what you thought you were. Was this like you saw a scene in Private Ryan where they were able to throw a grenade and one of the good guys caught it and threw it back? Is it that scene where it goes back like twice and then kills somebody on the good side? Is that what you think you could really do? Because here I have to tell you something. That was a movie, okay? Here's the thing about movies, right? This is something that came from my great acting guru a long time ago and far away. What he said is Theater is planned, rehearsed spontaneity. What you got in that scene in Private Ryan was a very well-rehearsed scene in which there were multiple angles and multiple things going on to make it look like somebody could do that. But you know what? In real life, you probably can't. Oh, maybe you'd get exceptionally lucky, but I doubt it. What's probably more likely to happen is you're going to blow off your hand, which, guess what? That's exactly what happened. Again, not happy that this happened. But you play stupid games, you're going to win stupid prizes. What do you think? The whole thing strikes me like that all the way through. It's a little bit, but not quite, like the Kyle Rittenhouse case. Was he justified in using his AR-15 to defend himself when he had weapons pointed at him, and only when he had weapons pointed at him? If you think he had them pointed at other people, you're wrong. You didn't watch the trial. He had people pointing weapons at him, and then he defended himself. So, okay, I'm actually totally fine with that. What I'm not fine with is the fact that he went there in the first place. It was a volatile situation, and God knows what could have happened. Law enforcement was completely standing off. They'd been told to stay away and let the rioters do whatever the hell they wanted. So he walked into a potentially deadly situation. Once he did that, and his life was in danger, and people pointing guns. Yes, he was absolutely justified in shooting. But if it had been me, and most of Gen X, we would have just said, "Stay home, buddy. Don't get involved with what's on. Just stay home. There's too much room for bad things to happen. Stay home." And that's how I see everything, really, that's played out in Minneapolis. Whether you like what ICE is doing or not, if you show up, it is a crime scene. Believe it or not, when they go around to do stuff, it is a crime scene. When you show up with banging pots and blowing whistles and air horns, which is what they were doing, on all of these, they're doing that. That is their major tactic. When you're banging all that stuff and you're doing it on an active crime scene and you're not obeying, whomever the officer is, whether it's local police or whether it's ICE, it doesn't matter. If you're not obeying their commands and doing what they want, you are going to have problems. And those problems could well be deadly or permanent, like getting shot or blowing off part of your hand. It is inherently dangerous to do what they're doing. It is inherently dangerous to go and interfere with any kind of law enforcement. It is dangerous. One hopes that it turns out okay, but it's dangerous. Only an idiot does that. And I think the reason that they're doing it is because they are, at this point, we now know, very highly organized. And I think they're eager to cause some kind of inciting incident, which is amazing. Because if you think about it, you're saying to yourself, I want to go to a place and cause an inciting incident, but I might get killed in the process. I might be part of the incident. I might be the incident. I might become the incident. I might be the idiot that grabs the flashbang grenade and tries to throw it back. I might become the idiot who is unalived as a result of being here to be offered up as the sacrificial lamb in an inciting incident. That certainly seems to be what's happening to me. And the people involved are just so stupid. You don't frack with law enforcement. It's just that simple. You do not frack with them. And politicians have got to knock off their rhetoric. Tim Walz did. He called Trump at some point. They had a conversation, after which he and the people around him stopped doing things like calling Trump a fascist and kind of cheerleading on people what they were doing, and generally having a very, bad outlook on it. Like we're trending in a very bad way. And the politicians, all of them need to knock it off. I was happy that Walz did. If he keeps it knocked off and keeps things to the point where you don't have protesters showing up everywhere and, maybe potentially getting killed because they're too damn stupid to stay out of the way. He's stopped encouraging that, and that's a good thing. Would that all politicians would do it. If you go back to podcast 2 previous to this, you'll find where I talked about how someone told me that I should be killed for having voted for Trump. So politicians have to knock off this stuff, because those people are emboldened to say stupid things like that, because for 10 years, politicians and the press have been doing this. They need to knock it off. They have pushed us to the brink of civil war. And the thing about it is, what they don't realize is, if it actually comes to civil war, they lose, because the president is not going to fall in behind them. The president is going to fall in behind a group of people, myself included on some of this, that are into law and order. And he is the commander-in-chief. He will order that military to utterly crush the people who are asking for some kind of rebellion. It will crush them. You have no idea what's arrayed against you. When you've got the full force of the U.S. military arrayed against you, you're talking about them watching you at 40,000 feet with a Reaper drone. That's what they can do, and they do it. Look at what footage we have coming back from warfare. Ask some of the people, some of the soldiers, some of the sailors, some of the Marines, the Guardians, the airmen. Ask them all. Ask them all. And they'll tell you the same thing. So, you don't frack with law enforcement. It's just that simple. You don't frack with law enforcement. And with that, I can get into, because not fracking with law enforcement is something that came very, very naturally to us. I will give you tonight a Gen X fable. Yes, that's right. You can gather around, boys and girls, and listen to old Uncle Bill read to you from the big book of Gen X fables. And just for people who don't know, Gen X is officially defined as anyone born between 1965 through 1980, making about 47 million of us alive today. I am just barely Gen X by 14 days. Gen X is often called the forgotten generation, but that's not really the case, because in order to be forgotten, you have to be noticed in the first place. And we're not forgotten, we're just invisible. But here's all you really need to know about Gen X. We don't care. Sarcasm and having absolutely no fracks whatsoever to give is the defining characteristic of Gen X. Now, lately, there's been a lot of Gen X comedians who've started coming out of the woodwork. My favorite one is Karen Morgan. She's a stand-up comedian, and my regular viewers know that I drove 7 hours from my home in Wall, South Dakota, to see her perform in Omaha, Nebraska at the Funny Bone. She was awesome. It's worth the money. Go see her if you get a chance. She's great. She's almost exactly my age. I know she's a very early Gen Xer in 1965. When I went to see her, I tried not to fanboy too much. I did, however, throw money and say, here, take my money. Give me merch. Take my money. Karen does, as I say, she's exceptional, and she does a really cool thing it's an observation about Gen X. And forgive me, Karen, I'm stealing your joke. She does use this particular joke in her current stand-up when I saw her. So be aware that despite the fact that what I'm going to say is funny, I didn't say it. I didn't make it up. She did. And she's got, 60 minutes others worth. So here's what she suggested. And I think this is beautiful. Gen X didn't have helicopter parents. We had the opposite of helicopter parents. We had Home Depot parents, which is where it looks like, there should be somebody around that can help you, but there's not. No one's coming. Here's what you get. If you want to get like a skill saw, we got one, and it's way up there at the top of the thing. So just grab your rolling ladder that we've got for you and roll over there, climb up and get it. But make sure that you don't drop it and cut your arm off on the way down, because nobody's going to take you to the hospital. Here's what you get. Blow on it, rub some dirt on it, walk it off, suck it up, and the perennial, quit your crying, or I'll give you something to cry about. So that's Gen X in a nutshell, in point of fact. She has any number of really, really good jokes about us in there, and she's very funny. If you get a chance, go see Karen Morgan. I believe she's Karen Morgan Comedy on Frackbook, but I don't know for sure about that. But you can find her. Very, very funny woman. But there are quite a number of us that nobody knows exist. Because of Karen, I was then moved to do a Gen X fable as frequently as I can, which is why you're going to get it now. I said the things going on in Minnesota are not to my liking. I want to make sure anyone who's guilty of something is brought to justice, put on trial for their lives. That simple. Same token, what the hell are you guys doing? How stupid are you exactly? And what happened that you got to your generation not understanding just how stupid what you're doing is? I'll give you an example. When I was very young, and I don't remember how old enough so that my parents were, comfortable with, opening the door, saying, go outside and play, boom, and letting it go. And I was gone until sundown. So there I was when I was young, and I'm driving past this empty gas station. They called it a service station at that time. It was a little different than a convenience store. It didn't have all the stuff you can buy at a convenience store. They usually would, have a bay for fixing cars and stuff like that. So this place had been closed. This place I was going by had been closed for some time. And as I'm driving by, I notice that it looks like, I noticed that it looks like in back, one of the doors is ajar. It's like, oh, that's cool. Let's take a look. So I go park my bike, went in the back door because it was in fact open. Somebody had neglected to properly lock it. And then I started fooling around. I found the safe in the floor, and it was easy enough to take the top off. It was not hard. I didn't have to pry anything or anything like that. So after just fooling around the way a 12-year-old might in a situation like that, got on my bike and went off to wherever the hell I was headed at the time. Next day, and I'm driving past, I've only told this story to somebody once. I was driving past, and the place was crawling with cops. I mean, crawling with them. And they were definitely investigating whatever the hell I'd done. It was clear that that's what was going on. So I'm Gen X, and we ain't stupid. So, I just rode my bike away very, very casually. And until about 6 months ago, I never even mentioned that story, despite the fact that at this point it's more an amusing story than anything else, and the statute of limitations has run out. But that's Gen X, man. We saw the cops, and we didn't stay around. Another one that's a perfect example, when I was in middle school, me and several classmates decided we were going to go to the one hot girl's place and teepee it, throw toilet paper around it. And so we'd bought the toilet paper, and there we're on our bikes at about midnight, riding through to get to this girl's house, and all of us are carrying, rolls of toilet paper. So we get stopped. There's a cop that comes and stopped us, and he says, so where are you boys heading? As if he didn't know. And I just said, just that way. He goes, don't you get smart with me. Where are you going? And we said, well, we were just going to go see this one girl we know. What, at midnight? No, you're not. Go home. And, he just got strict with it. He said, no, go home. And we were like, okay, yes, sir, bye. We don't need the hassle. See you long. That goes forward straight to present day in terms of how we operate with law enforcement. Now, I know from having taught IT at a college that had a criminal justice department, I know because every cop we ever had that worked there said, never talk to police. The magic statement whenever they want to talk to you about anything is this. This is very simple. Say this. I'm sorry, officer, but I can't make any statements without my attorney present. Even it seems like, the investigation has nothing to do with you and everything that you know of that you did was right. For God's sake, say that sentence. I'm sorry, officer. I cannot make any statements without my attorney present. Because I got to sit in once at a lecture from one of the guys who was adjunct in law enforcement and got to watch him do a brief lecture about suspect interrogation. Oh my God. You guys, you have no idea. You have no idea. These guys are really, really, really trained. The videos you see on YouTube that show, interrogation of suspects, and sometimes they'll do a little psychological thing here and there, that's nothing compared to what they can do. These guys really know what they're doing. And if they can, they will trap you into saying something that you did something wrong that you thought was perfectly legal. And the problem is they know the law, you don't. You may accidentally self-snitch and really never have any idea about it. So never talk to the police, period. End of story. I'm sorry, officer. I can't make any statements without my attorney present. And if a cop tells you to do something, you do it. Just simple as that. If they tell you to do something, you do it, because the consequences, as we've seen, can be dangerous or deadly. You do what the cop says when they say to. It's just that simple. To do otherwise is incredibly freaking ignorant. So the stuff going on there, it's if you look back into Gen Xers, we all have a story like mine. An encounter where we did something bad and got away with it because we stayed the hell away from the cops and we shut up. And you guys want to know how to actually do real activism? Because I can tell you, real activism that mattered. Back in the early 1980s, just as I was finishing up high school, the city in which I lived, Lincoln, Nebraska, had ordinances, and these were not unusual, by the way. The company I worked for part-time at that time, a chain, said that you could not hire gay people. And there were ordinances on the book in Lincoln, Nebraska that said you could. You could discriminate against them in hiring. You could discriminate against them in housing. You could not, if you wanted, you could say, no, I'm not going to rent to you because you're gay. That was perfectly legal in Lincoln, Nebraska in the early 1980s. And my generation, Gen X, we said, no, that's wrong. We're going to do what our hippie parents did, and we are going to march. Now, here's what we did that's different from today's quote-unquote peaceful demonstration. We actually had peaceful demonstrations, and here's how we did it. This wasn't even complicated. You call your local city government. You say, hey, we'd like to do a march from point A to point B. And then they'll usually go, okay, well, you got to sign this form, you got to sign that form, and then you're okay. And you know what happens? Day of the march, the cops are out blocking the streets. So it's perfectly safe for you to walk right down the middle of it. They will block them off for you. You don't have to be getting in anybody's way. It can be something that is, coordinated ahead of time with the proper people so that you are not blocking things like emergency vehicles and stuff like that. All you have to do is that. But we marched more than once. And by the time we were done, it was no longer legal to discriminate against gay people just for being gay. That's how you do actual activism. You choose your battle, make it something that can actually be changed, which nothing these morons are doing is going to affect any significant change. You need to choose your battle, make sure it's something that you can change, and do it in a way that the people that you want, whose minds you want to change, the average public, you do it in such a way that they are not inconvenienced, but maybe they have to sit for, at a traffic light for 5 minutes while the crowd goes through their intersection, and then the cops are going to open it back up. But what they're going to see is people who went through this, did it the right way, made sure that the police were all involved in stopping traffic for them, so it was safe for them, safe for the people on the traffic. And they see people marching, and they go, I wonder what that's about. And then they hear, okay, well, they're not happy that it's legal, explicitly legal, to discriminate against gay people in Nebraska. Some of those people are not, at that time, were certainly not going to be very conducive. Some of them really did believe that, gay people should be discriminated against. So they still are, however, the people whose hearts and minds you want to change. The people who you want to see and say, okay, that's wrong. I may not agree with their sexuality, but that explicitly curtailing rights is wrong. But you don't want them to be sitting there in traffic while you're sitting on the ground and with banners up blocking all lanes of traffic in some road someplace. That just pisses them off. But you do it the way we did it, that'll be okay. They may even think highly of you after that. But what they're doing now isn't activism. It's not free speech. It's being stupid. You don't go onto a crime scene. If a Gen Xer, by the way, had ever come across this crap, any Gen Xer I know If we had seen those ICE people, we would have been on our bikes in the opposite direction at warp 8. There's just no question we would not be there very much longer. We saw cops. We kind of took off for the most part. The time that I had to take off was extreme, and not telling anybody that's what we did. There are a lot of things that we did that our descendants would probably be very, very surprised about. But shutting up about it for the rest of your life, which is almost what happened to me, that's just how we operate. Stay away from the cops. If you do, for some reason, have to interact with them, be friendly, be nice. Say things. If it turns out that they want to know questions about you, say, "I'm sorry, officer, but I can't speak without my attorney present." And you let it go from there. That's all. That's it. Otherwise, you stay the hell away. If for some reason they are arresting you, here's what you do. You very nicely put your hands behind your back for them when they go to cuff you. When they want to put you in the car, just say, "Yes, officer," and go climb into the car. When they take you out and they want to book you, then just be cool about the booking. When it comes time to put you in a holding cell, be cool about being in the holding cell. Do not go nuts. Do not try to cause arguments. Don't try to get them to do something different, because you never will. They are cops, and they're doing their jobs to, enforce the law. They're not going to stop just because some idiot grabs a flashbang grenade and gets their hand blown off. That will not stop them from doing what their job is. It doesn't matter what you do. It will not stop them. You're being pointless and you're getting yourselves killed. Stop. When you see the cops, stay the hell out of the way. If they're going to talk to you, your magic phrase: "I'm sorry, officer, but I cannot make any statements without my attorney present." And if you get in trouble, do exactly what they say. That one woman who got shot, who was in her van, if she'd stopped her van, if she'd put it in park and turned it off, she'd be alive today. What she did was she put herself in an extraordinary level of danger. Now, if that ICE officer was doing something wrong, if he did it badly, if he actually was responsible for her death, then yes, I want to see him prosecuted. But at this point, we can't tell anything. At this point, the facts are already in flux. It'll take some time, months probably, before we really have an idea what went down. So do I want him taken care of? Yes. But I really like it if these stupid protesters were less stupid. You don't do this stuff. It is inevitably going to lead to consequences, and you will not like those consequences. I think the issue is that for so many years, they were allowed to, riot, loot, commit arson, robbery, armed robbery, assault with a deadly weapon, and unalive innocents. They were allowed to do that for so many years with no consequences whatsoever, that the reintroduction of consequences to their actions seems to be driving them completely insane. I mean, really insane. I'm seeing a lot of insanity. What you do, real simple, guys, you stay the hell away from them. If ICE is there, you turn on your bike and you leave. Or you turn in your car and you leave. And if ICE says, "Don't get smart with me, kid, get out," then you get the hell out. If you're busy not doing what they tell you to do, well, I don't want to say I have no sympathy, but I'm going to say, I'm sorry, your fault. You went around and antagonized them on a crime scene. What did you think was going to happen, schmuck? Again, if there was something untoward here, and I cannot tell personally from the video that I'm seeing, it is all very difficult to make sense of. It may be that it doesn't come out until a court or something like that, or whatever investigation that Tim Walz is doing, because I believe he's been said he can have the go-ahead on this. So it may be that we don't hear about any of this until we get some kind of official findings, or maybe the person involved goes to trial. If that's the case, I definitely want them to go to trial. By the same token, I think if you're going around interfering with crime scenes, and if you're going around not doing what cops tell you to do, and frankly, if you're going around doing anything other than what a smart Gen Xer on a bike would have done, which is turn around and drive off in the opposite direction, if you're not doing that, you will get consequences. The consequences obviously can be deadly. The consequences can involve injury, serious injury. For God's sake, you guys. don't try to grab a flashbang grenade. You're not Private Ryan. This is not how that works. You grab a flashbang grenade, and it's probably going to hurt you, as it did that woman who got her hand, part of her fingers blown off. Don't do this stuff. Just don't do it. Be Gen X. Maybe I should make a t-shirt like that. Be Gen X, run from the cops. It's that simple. If you see them, quietly turn around, go the opposite direction. Whatever's going on, you don't need any of that trouble. You have enough of your life to deal with already. You don't need to add to it with this. Trust me. Everybody has problems. We do not need to add to it with getting your hand blown off or shot. So don't do it. Stop. Quit. Please, for God's sake. It's pointless. It's stupid. I don't have a hell of a lot else to talk about, and I'm not seeing that I actually have any viewers looking here. I have a... sometimes when I think maybe I'm getting off to where I'm needing some content badly, I will start or do pieces of a pitch that I've had out there since forever for what I call the DC film universe, or the DCFU. I do this because I now know from having seen James Gunn's Superman by James Gunn that James Gunn DC is going to crash and burn. It's going to die, and there's no way to stop it. It sucks. It's bad on multiple levels, and it's terrible. So I have a pitch sitting out here that floats around there that I might get around to actually doing in its entirety. I might do it on its own video. But I have a pitch out there for my DCFU, and it's lengthy, and it's comprehensive, and it allows you to do very, very different things with the story. I was kind of thinking I might end up getting to that, but it looks like, according to the old clock on the wall, that I've been here for about an hour 45. For me, that's pretty good. If I don't have a lot of viewer input, an hour 45 is pretty good for me. So I guess that's all the time that we have tonight for this episode of the Late Stardate. I would love to keep the conversation going, so please like, sub, hit the notification bell, share me a comment or two, and share me on social media, and tell all of your friends, family, neighbors, pets, and livestock to do the same. If you'd like to follow me on X, well, you can't. My account was suspended for generally unspecified reasons, and frankly, my life is so much better for not having an X account. However, you can follow me on other social media. Link to those in my description box below. So thanks for watching the Late Stardate here on Tales from SYL Ranch, because it's always late somewhere in the world. And I'm your host, Bill Stone.
Ultimate power in this world has always been one simple thing: the control and manipulation of minds.